Welcome to Cultivating Excellence, a podcast for parents, educators, and professionals passionate about unlocking student potential. I'm your host, Dr. Rebecca Resnick, a licensed psychologist dedicated to helping children, teens, and young adults achieve their potential in an increasingly complex and competitive world. On this show, we explore the strategies and insights needed to prepare our children for future success and happiness. Join us as we bring you expert advice from leaders in psychology, education, and child development, all aimed at cultivating the best in every young mind. Hello, everyone. It's me, Dr. Rebecca Resnick. This is a topic today that is very near and dear to my heart, and I'm so pleased to have the amazing Mr. Barry Davis, who is head of the McLean School of Maryland, and the equally amazing Ms. Kathy Patterson, who is Director of Enrollment at the McLean School of Maryland. So why am I so jazzed today? Well, I come from a family of bright dyslexic people. And all through the 80s, I watched my mother fight the battle for getting my brother the education that he needed. And I think that struggle today of serving bright kids with learning disabilities is still very much a thing. Because when I talk with families, I'm either hearing that their disability is basically being ignored and they're not getting the extra help they need, for example, evidence-based reading instruction, or it's just the opposite where everything is very dumbed down and they're not getting the kind of opportunities and enrichment to address their brightness and their talents and all the great things that they can do too. And so if you're in this same boat where you're thinking to yourself, what do I even ask for? Who is doing this right? I have two experts for you today in Barry and Kathy. So Barry and Kathy, thank you for being here.
You're welcome.
Our pleasure.
Great.
To kick us off, being a parent of a student who is bright with learning differences and/or disabilities just can be incredibly frustrating. What would you like parents to understand about the needs of these unique students?
Well, I think that I hear a lot about the frustration part, and I really feel that that's something that needs to be looked at. I mean, as you mentioned, we've got these bright students. They have these unique skill sets. And I think one of the most important things for us to pay attention to is that they are bright. And these unique skill sets are not something that we should look at from a deficit lens. And I think for a parent, I think it's really important for you to continue to let your child know that, who they are is okay and that they are bright and they may learn a little bit differently. And, but that is just a part of their character and who they are. And so I think it's important to not show, your child that you're frustrated, because then they start to believe that there is something that is wrong with them. And I find that if a child is confident, then they're able to overcome so much. They're able to, see themselves through a different lens, and I think they can move forward in a positive way.
I would agree with that. And I would only add, as a parent of a child who is dyslexic, who was here at McLean for many years, I certainly walked in the same shoes as your mother did, where our youngest son started out at our public school and, they kept assuring me that he was reading on grade level. And I thought, well, he's not reading, so I'm not sure how he's reading on grade level.
So
he was only in kindergarten and first grade, but, having brought him then here to McLean. He's now a graduate. He's in college, more than halfway done, and doing quite well. And I was, I think back on the journey that he took and what Barry said as far as really trying to celebrate the student. I think it's easy for parents, and I talk to parents often who tend to shy away from sharing the testing with their child. And I think that is something that's important. I know many testers like yourself, do talk with the students, especially, depending on the age, you share certain information. But I think if the student's going to sit through and go through testing to discover that they are dyslexic, it's only fair to them to help them understand all the things that they are quite talented in, and then the areas that they might find somewhat frustrating in school because it's just hard to access the curriculum.
Yeah, and we all have things we're not good at that we have to work harder at. And, Kathy, when I think about your story, the fact that you are a speech pathologist was really helpful because you came in as a professional, really understanding, applied language tasks like reading and writing. And yet even you had to fight and had a hard time getting what your kid needed.
Right. Yes. No, absolutely. I mean, I think, that was quite a while ago when I was fighting the IEP system. But, today, as we all know, I mean, we happen to live in an area with wonderful public schools here in Montgomery County. But, the large class sizes that, they've kind of been forced to have puts the teachers at a disadvantage. I mean, I truly believe that anyone that's in education and teaching likes children, likes education, but, their hands are tied as they have so many students in a classroom. So, here at McLean, not only is it the instruction that the students are able to receive to help overcome some of the areas of challenge, but it's also that the small class sizes give our teachers the gift of really getting to know the students.
That is such a gift. When I was a special educator, there just weren't schools like McLean. And if there were, they were paying like $14,000 a year. And so, every teacher has that dream of really being able to connect with students and make a difference and get creative about instruction and see students bloom. And in the public school system, having been a public school teacher, it's very challenging. People think it's an easy job. It is not.
Well, and that creativity part, I think, is really important because if I've got a classroom that has, manageable numbers, one, I am going to need to take the time to get to know who each of the students are, and they're all going to require something that's slightly different. And as the teacher, I have the ability to be creative and to look at how I want to reach each of those individual kids. It definitely increases the odds that they're going to thrive and be able to reach those goals that are set for them.
Oh, yeah. And Barry, so you're captain of the ship, and McLean School is recognized as a center of innovation, both for educating and supporting the character development and even like spiritual development, although you're secular, of your students. So what is it about McLean that is letting these students really survive and thrive? And if you could speak with an eye towards maybe the folks who aren't close enough to attend, McLean in particular, what is it this population really needs? And why do you have such a great track record of success?
Yeah. Well, one of the things that I was really excited about when I came here was McLean School has, and you've heard us talk about the abilities model. The thing that I'm so excited about with the abilities model is that we're looking at kids from a perspective of what they can do versus what they can't. And so why is that important? To me, it's important because your mindset is completely different. Having grown up in a time when people were just basically talking about, well, Barry can't do this, he can't do that. It already puts you in a space where you're feeling less than. If I'm feeling less than, the odds that I'm going to be able to achieve or going to be able to get what I need to get out of any class is pretty low. If you speak to me on behalf of what I can do, well, we know you do this well. We know you do these things well. It already puts me in a positive framework. If I'm thinking from that positive space, then you can also teach me about the areas that I find challenging, and I'm going to approach those in a more positive way because I feel that I can. And something that is that simple is really something that at a lot of places does not happen. I mean, I spent time in a lot of schools and I've been a part of some of those meetings where we have to tell a parent, well, your child can't do this, or we don't have the resources to support them in this area.
Not
and
pleasant.
So one of the big things to me is that we focus on what kids can do. And another thing about that is it also helps them in terms of just building relationships in the school, because again, if I'm feeling positive about who I am, then I can reach out and be a much different part of the community itself.
Yeah, those relationships are like the key to keeping kids motivated. Kids, they don't work for stickers and prizes at the end of the day. They work because people love them and believe in them. I was going to say, so the abilities model, where you're really focusing on strengths, that's a big part of it. Kathy, what else is McLean doing that you feel like is part of the secret sauce that you mentioned as to how you're serving these students? Like, what are you doing programming wise or in terms of training the staff, instruction wise?
Yep. So great question. So our teachers that teach reading in grades K through 8 are all trained in Orton Gillingham, which, as you know, is a research-based reading program that is a systematic way to teach students how to read. Oftentimes what we see here is, depending on the grade the student comes in, but if they're coming to us in the middle school or even in the upper school and they don't have those foundational reading skills, they are in curriculum that is just simply too hard for them to access. And so in addition to the training of our teachers, we have ongoing professional development. And I think, as Barry touched on, building those relationships isn't always going to be with the classroom teacher. We have many students who may be dyslexic and are quite talented in athletics, or they are amazing artists, or they love theater and band. They are part of our robotics team. And so it isn't just finding like who is the academic teacher that you connect with, but who is the person at school? I mean, every student should have someone that they relate to and that they can find a part of their day where they're shining and they really are celebrated. And it might not always be in the classroom, but if they find success in other areas, then oftentimes they're feeling good about themselves and they're able to then enter a classroom and, do better.
Yeah, that's huge because for a lot of kids, they just don't get enough recess. They don't get enough PE. They don't get enough art or other kinds of enrichment. They don't have a lot of these opportunities. And so, it's these opportunities that make life worth living for a child, especially for our learning disabled kids, where they have to work just so much harder to do everything.
Yeah. So, one other thing that I wanted to mention, so there's a former teacher, actually passed away, named Rita Pearson. And what she talks about is the fact that every child needs a champion. And that's something that we really kind of focus on because, as Kathy said, it may not be that core teacher. It could be somebody else that is in the building that connects with that child. And so we have been spending a lot of time working to not just know the students, but really to get the students. So on a deeper level, so that we can tell exactly what is it that student needs. When are they a little bit off? As you mentioned about whether it's recess or music, being able to teach kids through those areas that they learn best is something else that we really want to work hard to do.
Yeah. And another thing I wanted to pull up from what both of you were saying is the use of the term evidence-based. What evidence-based basically means is that there's empirical independent science to support what you're doing. And part of my experience, and Kathy, I know you and I have talked a lot about this, and Barry, I don't know you quite as well, but we talked a little bit about it, is that a lot of parents assume that their children are getting evidence-based instruction, evidence-based curriculum, evidence-based instructional practices, particularly in reading. And that's actually not the case. Most teachers out there were not trained in instructional methods and pedagogy that actually has a really solid evidence base. And that is one thing that I want to raise awareness among parents about, because when the school just says like, oh, trust us, we're the professionals, we know what we're doing, they may actually not. And so if your instinct is telling you, like you said, Kathy, how could he be on grade level if he can't read? Always take that with a grain of salt. And if it doesn't make sense, find somebody who can help you, break through that wall of kind of ignorance and sort of well-meaning low expectations.
Yeah, I see that often when parents, as part of the admission process here at McLean, we do ask for testing. So testing like you yourself provide or other psychologists. So either a psychoed or a neuropsych, we will take admission testing, which of course would just include the IQ and achievement. And oftentimes when parents share that testing as part of the admission process, they're surprised and they said this tester says that my child has dyslexia or, has some other areas of challenge with writing or with math, and they're getting all A's. This doesn't make sense to me. And so,
and they're right.
Trying to break it down and, help them understand that sometimes students are able to kind of fly under the radar, especially if they don't present with any kind of behavioral challenges.
Yeah, if they're people pleasers.
Right. And then they kind of go through the system. They get enough done to, get that A or B, and there aren't any alarms raised until, more thorough testing is done.
Until the center cannot hold and everything falls apart, and then it's a huge crisis.
Yeah, absolutely.
But if I'm that parent, I think it really is important to ask questions. If I'm the parent and I'm just looking at the grade, let's say, and I'm excited because of that grade, then it is possible for that child to fall through a crack. And I know the system is different than it was when I was younger, but I know I spent time in classrooms where if I wasn't disruptive, teachers were pretty content to have me just kind of be there, but not be engaged. And so the better the relationship is that we have with our students and with our families, the better the possibility that the child is going to be able to reach those goals and those high expectations that we have set.
Yeah. And in defense of teachers, if you are, say, working in a classroom where you have 30 kids and in an inclusion model, they may have stuck into your classroom 5 kids who have special needs of some kind, and they're expecting you to basically do all of the mandates in the IEP to serve those students. It's really an impossible task that we're expecting it to go well. And I'm always thinking why are we expecting that to go well? We seem to be setting up not only our kids, but also our teachers for failure. And this is why a lot of public schools are having a hard time keeping teachers, because the teachers, they went into it with love in their hearts. They didn't expect a great paycheck, but they're burning out really fast and, just going through the motions, going through using techniques that really aren't evidence-based. That is incredibly frustrating for everybody. So I don't want to throw teachers too much under the bus.
Yes.
Not that you were, but just to clarify for all the parents out there. So you guys use testing in a way that is not done in a lot of schools. In the public school, the screening done by a school psychologist is really to establish eligibility for services. And services might be coordinated by an individual education program. They may be an accommodations plan. A lot of independent schools have Catholic support plans, learning support plans. But you all are fairly innovative in terms of how you actually use test data. And I know parents are often really nervous about sharing the test data. Do you mind pulling back the curtain a bit and talking about what you're actually using it for? Okay, what are you doing to the two of you?
Absolutely.
Is it a tag team?
Yeah. Well, I think that, the testing is an important part of the admission process. As you know, the IQ testing shares with us a student's cognitive abilities. So where they are. And, as you know, there are some of the subtests within the IQ, which if you happen to have ADHD or you're very anxious, that's going to come through, which is all helpful information for us to have. And then we look at the IQ and you can make some predictions about what the child's achievement testing will be, which measures the reading, writing, and the math skills. And oftentimes with the students that we see here at McLean, there can be quite a discrepancy. So very bright students who are very capable, have high cognitive skills, but underperforming in some of the academic areas. And so that helps us to be able to, once the students come here, place them in classes where they're in a class with other students working at about the same level. It also allows us to see those areas of strength and to see some areas that perhaps just weren't tapped into, or it helps explain if they are diagnosed with ADHD, if they are diagnosed with anxiety. I mean, that is additional training that our faculty have that I think is really pretty good. I mean, unfortunately, with ADHD, there's not one strategy to use to help the student stay attentive. And obviously, parents, have to look at the options. I mean, some will try diets, some will try medication to, help the student be available for the learning. And the same is true with anxiety. I mean, sometimes a student who may really struggle with written language and just getting their thoughts and ideas out, they're oftentimes highly verbal, but unable to compose essays in an organized way. And so that testing, once again, helps us to see those areas of vulnerability for a student. And then it helps us assess, are we going to be able to support this student? And once they're here, how to best support them.
The other piece of that is that through that testing, our teachers can look at, what is the way that this child learns best. So we connect back to this whole abilities model. In what way, where are your strengths and where are your challenges? It gives the teachers basically a window into what I may want to try to work with this particular child.
Yeah, and that's the best case scenario, is that the testing sort of makes ideas pop for the teacher. And when I was getting my training, one of my professors would always say that your major task when you're undertaking an assessment is to answer the question, who is this person? And, I love the fact that you all share that instead of just looking at the scores and saying, yay or nay. You're really thinking very deeply about the whole profile of strengths, vulnerabilities, things to build on, preferences. But also, the interesting thing about testing is not just grabbing a bunch of scores, but really getting to why did that child struggle? And to your point, Kathy, it can be that they were very inattentive. It could be that they're super anxious and perfectionistic. Could be dyslexia, could be a issue with taking perspective. Maybe they don't really have in mind what I have in mind when I say write an essay. They may be, just writing a list. And that's what's fascinating about this. And that's the way it should be used.
Yeah, I would agree.
So students often find their way to you when things have not gone well. Kathy, you're famous for talking about the wounded ducks. And especially with reading, can you paint some pictures for people about what a lot of kids sort of look like in terms of emotional and achievement journey when they come to you? What are you seeing when students kind of come to your door and say, is McLean going to be able to help me?
Yeah, great question too. I think depending on the age, the reaction, if you will, of the student is going to vary. So with very young students, but I started seeing it by second and third grade. Oftentimes in other schools, by the time you're getting into third and fourth grade, you're no longer learning to read, you are reading to learn. And so if you don't have those foundational skills, you start to see yourself behind some peers. And so I think that, and then I often find that it's the middle school students who have the hardest time, obviously leaving their friends and their other school, but oftentimes they are really, oftentimes parents will say, we hesitated bringing up the fact that we thought that the child should change schools. But once we broached it with them, they were thrilled to know that there were other schools out there that actually taught differently and had smaller classes. So I think that, when the students come in to visit as part of the admission process, I often hear from parents that they came home and just, had an amazing day, felt like they knew the teacher, got to meet some friends. Our students love to host other students who are coming in. So I think it depends on the journey that each child has been on. And we really try to take time. We oftentimes speak with testers like yourself. We speak with outside providers that the student may be working with, and obviously talk with the parents and have an interview with them because they know their child best.
Yeah.
So we try to we pair students up with what we call a sidekick or a buddy in the lower school to help them have that person in their homeroom or advisory that is going to be kind of their go-to person for those first couple of weeks of school.
Nice.
And I think that helps to, settle the dust somewhat. And really the transformation, as we often use as part of our tagline. I mean, I see it happen all the time. And I think that parents just feel this relief that they're not going through these homework battles at home. Yeah. They have a child who's getting in the car or on the bus, off the bus, and is happy to have gone to school that day. So, seeing those changes.
Yeah. Well, I think it's a few different things also. So if I'm the parent and my child has been at whatever school happens to be, and they've struggled for these various reasons, there hasn't been the support for them, whatever it happens to be. Parents also give off something to their child. They give off that, whether it's not necessarily frustration, but they do give off something to their child. And I think sometimes the child feels almost less than because I can't do this or I can't do that. And so one of the things that I'm excited about here at McLean is that when kids come in, what we're looking to do, I think initially, is provide an environment that is safe, one that you feel that you can risk and that you can learn. And then the trust that's established with the teachers, being able to get to know you and to see what the things are that you need, I think are important parts. So, I don't know if a lot of people speak about it, but I think that that socio-emotional piece, I think that relationship piece, I think what a space feels like is so critical to a child being able to feel comfortable enough to take the risk to learn. And the other side of it is that when you think about the number of years that many of these kids have spent feeling that they can't, to all of a sudden get to a place where they feel that they can. I mean, that's a game changer for the family.
It is.
So that's really a big part. I think that's a really big part. And then you bring them in the door and you have teachers that really know how to engage them. And so I think it's a special place here because of that.
So a couple things that you all do that I think parents might be really interested in. One of which is your innovative reading and writing approach. The other piece is how you train your teachers and incorporate mindfulness into daily education. Could you talk about those two topics, and whichever one you want to go first and whichever of you feels like you want to start? I'm all ears.
Can I speak about the mindfulness part of it first?
The chair recognizes Barry.
So, first, I'll say this. I had never had experience with mindfulness before going into one of the schools that I used to work at a while ago. And I had never had an opportunity to actually just kind of be in my own space, in my own head, and to feel myself actually really calmed and relaxed. If it was just in a space where I was ready to be 150% present in what I was doing. So just this week, I went into some classes in the morning, and they were doing their mindful minute and taking time to sit, and before they actually engaged in the work, just to sit, relax, calm themselves down. The thing that a lot of folks don't realize is that for some people, they think that's just, it's just, hooey.
Crunchy granola.
Yeah. But it is not. And physically, it changes who you are. And I would ask middle school kids, when was the last time that you actually sat in a space where you were completely silent, where there was no music, no nothing around,
no phone,
where it was just you in your own head with your own thoughts?
Oh, gosh.
And most of them, and I say other than when you were sleeping, and most of them, they can't give you a time. And I just think that as hectic as the day-to-day is, and for kids now, it's a lot more hectic than it was for me. as hectic as the day-to-day is, for them to take intentional time to slow down is really critical to their own growth. It's a lifetime skill.
Yeah.
And their own ability to achieve what they need to achieve in the classroom. And what I found is that kids end up getting to a place where they crave it.
Yeah.
And I think that's really important, and something that we're continuing to work on, and even looking to work on in a deeper level as well.
Yeah, because when we think about how the brain works, when we only have so much cognitive counter space, and when our cognitive counter space is full of worries or stress, when our adrenaline is steering the ship, we don't have a lot of counter space for like long division or reading a book chapter or learning about ecosystems, because our brains are designed to focus on the negative and focus on stress. And so what mindfulness, what you're really teaching these kids is how to clear their cognitive counter space so that they have that problem solving space for learning and focusing. And you're right, that is a life skill. Like many people my age certainly have never really learned how to do that.
And it's also counter to what we normally would do. So if I'm teaching, I want to get as much done as I can. I want to get these kids prepared. And so to get folks to understand that taking that time to do, whatever the mindfulness activity is that you're doing, you actually are able to move further in what it is that you're teaching or what it is that you're doing. If you're an adult, you're actually able to move further because of that gift of time that you've given yourself.
Yeah. One of my advisors when I was doing my master's degree was Frank Lyman, and he was the fellow who came up with the idea of think time. And, he really would emphasize slowing down is actually a way of speeding up.
Yes.
The more we give our brains time to consolidate and literally file away the information, connect it up to other information, that's not wasted time. It's actually where long-term learning really takes place. So this is very science-based. This is not hippie stuff.
Yeah. And I'd say, just to add, I do want to address how we provide instruction in reading and writing. But when my son was here, he happens to be an athlete, and he's playing golf in college. And when he played basketball here, he really started to use the mindfulness. I mean, he would before a game, now before a golf match, I mean, he will, sit in his room or sit in his space and really just collect his thoughts about what he's getting ready to go do. So I think, and he learned that here. It was not something that I think he necessarily would have picked up otherwise, but he learned how to do it. He also learned that it wasn't that granola thing that, only certain people do, that it was okay as an athlete and a, 6 foot tall guy to do. So
it's the same thing though. If we choke, remember how they used to try and trigger other people to choke, that choking on the field or the court is exactly what happens to a lot of our kids with learning disabilities when they're trying to learn, because the anxiety just ramps up, and then, then you're really done. There's just, when you're too anxious, nothing really gets done except that your anxiety snowballs. And so, Kathy, getting back to the evidence-based reading and writing, and like I mentioned before, a lot of parents really don't understand that the vast majority of teachers were not trained in techniques that actually work.
Right.
So when you're thinking about curriculum and instruction, what is it that makes a reading and writing program truly evidence-based and truly effective?
So I think for us here at McLean, we separate out reading and written language skills. So reading, as I mentioned before, our teachers are trained in Orton Gillingham. As the students get older and they're getting into reading novels, rather than our classes being structured with a lecture and you as a student are expected to, take notes and then go home and study those and come back and, understand, it's more discussion based. So it's teacher to student. It's also student to student. So when you're reading a novel, you're discussing the theme and the plot and the setting and why characters did, certain actions in a novel. When it comes to written language, we separate those out because we have found that it's essential for the students to, I mean, early on, obviously, we are working on handwriting by using
Thank
learning
goodness you
without
are,
peers.
because all the research tells us how important handwriting is.
Yeah.
And I'm hearing over and over again from public school families, like, they're not doing handwriting anymore. They're not doing spelling. So sorry to interrupt you. I just couldn't resist saying that.
We teach cursive in the lower school. And so we do teach handwriting. I mean, our students do have Chromebooks in the middle school. They have an iPad in the lower school. The lower school doesn't really use them a whole lot.
But that's a good thing.
Writing purposes. But we do know that there are some students who have very high verbal skills. So they do have an easier time dictating, telling you what they learned, and then they can go back and they can kind of edit, what they've dictated. But I think that developing the ability to, what is a topic sentence that obviously then moves into a thesis? How do you support it with details? How do you transition from one paragraph to the next? So our writing classes in the lower school and English classes in the middle and upper school focus on that. We also, because we use Orton Gillingham, also have word study classes, which is spelling K through 4, where they are the sounds that they're focusing on in their reading, they're also focusing on in their word study classes.
And that is exactly how it should be. I can't tell you how many parents I talk to and their kids are supposedly learning reading and spelling with flashcards and memorizing like random lists of words. I always tell parents, if you've got a spelling list that is like Thanksgiving, Pilgrim, Mayflower, Turkey, that is not an evidence-based spelling program.
Yeah.
So what you're saying, just to sort of recap it, not only are you sensitizing kids to like the underlying framework for how applied language tasks are accomplished, things like essay structure, plot structure. A lot of kids who are taught in schools where they're using like writer's workshop, these sort of constructivist, like just go and write. Well, we don't teach anybody to do anything by saying like, oh, just go do it. You would never teach a kid like to play the guitar or to play basketball or to ride a bike by just saying like, watch a whole bunch of other people do it and then you go do it because now you're a writer. This doesn't make any sense. It's not how people learn.
No.
So you're making it all very explicit and you're helping the kids become strategic, if I captured that correctly.
I think so. And it is something that our graduates come back and talk about. They go off to college and they are quite surprised at how difficult it is for other students to write. Of course, we've come into an age with AI. So, some of that, and we have to, we have to lean into it, which we are in a constructive way to help students understand like how it can be helpful, but also like, certain things that you can't do with it. And I think just to touch on one thing to tie together, oftentimes anxiety and written language go hand in hand. The student is anxious and, we have a teacher who's still here. She's now in our upper school and she's an English teacher. And I can remember one time being in her class and she, walked by a student that was really struggling to just start those initial thoughts. And she walked by and she's like, I can see you've typed a few words and I can see that you're really thinking hard. And I look forward to reading your paragraph. And, the student ended up completing like 2 or 3 sentences. Others completed like 6 or 7. But the fact that, she recognized that he was struggling. She, kind of gave him that positive reinforcement, I think helped him to then, as Barry said, like take that chance, just start to put some thoughts and ideas together.
Yeah, there's nothing like a little personal contact, somebody recognizing like, I know you're struggling, but it's going to be okay. You can do it. I believe in you and I'm actually paying attention to what you're doing. So there's been research about writing instruction where they asked teachers, what subject do you feel least prepared to teach? And it was actually writing. Because most of what you learn when you're this, you're both educators, most of what you learn about applied language tasks is often, these constructivist ideas where you sort of assume that kids learn by doing and they learn by collaborating with other kids who also don't know how to do it. So our writing instruction in particular out in many schools, public and private, is really quite weak. You have a lot of kids with great ideas, but they really don't understand what quality writing is, and they can't approach it strategically.
Yeah.
So you do a lot with thinking about writing as a very strategic task.
Yes. I mean, I would say, generally speaking, the expectations in a class, so the teachers all have like a bulletin board with words that are kind of banned words, which are generally, just
not
words
the
don't
words
really
that start
tell
with
you a whole
F.
lot. And so they all have those posted. They also, in our English and writing classes, they will give an assignment. So they're going to write an essay on a given topic, and they'll break it down so that the first introductory paragraph is due in 2 days, and they'll have the student, and some students can receive edits through like a Google Doc, and they can make they can add some language to it, they can change some wording. Some students get those edits and they don't know where to begin.
Yes.
So the students and teachers sit down one-on-one, and because we have the small class sizes, the teachers can afford to do that and help the student talk, because sometimes the student's like, I've given you everything I know about this topic,
right.
and it's 3 sentences.
Yeah.
So sometimes it's the teacher just picking out one idea that they've written. Well, tell me why the character did this or when they did it. And sometimes just that verbal connection back and forth to help the student really think, because the teacher knows from the student's participation in class that they have a whole lot more to offer.
Sure.
But oftentimes the students, and some students just also want to get it done fast, so they don't, spend a whole lot of time on it. They might have a short attention span, so their ability,
right.
They just want to, fill in the blanks and kind of move on to the next thing. Yeah.
It's also about what their, what their interest is in what it is that they're writing, and having some choice in that as well. Yeah, I was in a class this week, and we're only in the first week of school. I was in a class where the teacher was talking about voice and as a way to help kids to start thinking about putting words down on paper, whether it was in poetry or whether, whatever it happened to be. And I thought it was interesting just because, one student had said, no one's ever told me that my voice was important.
Aww.
And so just to be thinking about it from that perspective, knowing that, whatever it is that I choose to write about is something that's going to be, it's going to be of value, it's going to be important.
Yeah.
And just, as Kathy was saying, just if that's what it takes, if that's what gets me started, then I think there's a pretty good odds that I'm going to move forward in a good way.
Mm-hmm. Nice. So Barry, I'll ask this last one of you. I know you both are very busy and have a million things on your plate to handle today. In terms of creating this milieu at a school where kids feel safe, they feel cared about, and the teachers do too, in your role as a leader, how are you deliberately working to create this milieu where everybody can really thrive as a community?
A lot of different ways. I think presence is important. I think you have to model what it is that you want.
Yeah.
What it is that you want to see. I mean, I spend every day, most days, beginning of school, I'm outside with music playing and greeting kids when they come in. And
you have like your own theme song?
No, I play a lot of different ones.
Oh, okay.
It depends on what I'm feeling on that particular day.
Nice.
But people know whether you are authentically engaging or if you're going through the motions. I love what I do and I love where I'm at. And so engaging people is not just a exercise. It's just, it's a desire to be with people. It's a desire to continue to learn from people. If it's not authentic for me, and if I don't feel that space is safe for me to be completely who I am, then how can I expect anyone else to feel that the space is safe for them? And so, I think like anything that's valuable, it takes time.
Yeah.
It takes time for people to get to know you and to trust in the community. But I feel like we're moving along in a good way. And I also know that, as I mentioned earlier, if the space is not safe, and if I can't be my authentic self, then I am not going to continue to learn. I still love that I learn from the people that I work with, and I learn from the people that are here. And so it's just I don't think it's magic. I think it's really about the commitment to the folks that you're with every day, and I'm completely committed.
Oh, and that's what it's all about, right?
Yeah, I think
Yeah.
so.
Okay. Well, thank you both. I wish I could go back in time and send this podcast to my mother back in like 1985. But it's really beautiful the way that you all are thinking so carefully about how to serve these twice exceptional and bright kids with learning differences. Thank you so much for your time and for sharing this information. And I hope that parents and other teachers will get inspired to try and do things differently and support these kids. Thank you so much. And everybody, I'm going to link to Barry and Kathy's website bios in the show notes, link to McLean School and a couple other things that were mentioned in passing. Thank you so much, guys. Such a pleasure talking to you.
Thank you so much, Rebecca.
Thank you for listening to Cultivating Excellence. We hope today's episode gave you actionable insights to support the young people in your life. If you enjoyed this episode, don't forget to subscribe and leave a review to help others discover our mission. For more resources and to stay connected, visit us at resnickpsychology.com or follow us on social media. Until next time, remember, every child has the potential to achieve excellence.